Well, hey y'all, welcome to Tuesday Leadership Tips with Lita. I'm gonna give you a few seconds to come in. Come on in. Let's get this time together going. I'm excited. I hope that you are excited. If you are scrolling through and passing by this is Tuesday Leadership Tips with Lita. And if you want to hang around, if you are a leader who is growing, who is advancing, who is expanding, this conversation today is for you. And as we're giving folks a time to come in, I have an event that I'm going to tell you about towards the end of our time together today. So I'm excited. I'm excited. Let's go. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome on YouTube. Welcome on IG. Welcome on TikTok. Y'all come on in. Let's get this time going. I'm excited for it. All right. All right. Again, welcome to Tuesday Leadership Tips with Lita. I am Lita. Let's jump into it. Today's leadership tip is this: smart leaders know, emotionally intelligent leaders grow. I'm going to say that one again. Smart leaders know, emotionally intelligent leaders grow. Let's jump into it. Today, I want to spend some time just helping us to understand why emotionally intelligent leaders, how they advance faster, how they make relationships easier. Emotional intelligence is the real leadership advantage, and we're going to talk about why that is today. So if you are on TikTok, on IG, or on YouTube, if you have some thoughts or something that you want to put in on this time that we have together, drop it in the chat. Drop it in the chat, and if I get a chance to catch it as I'm talking, we'll talk about it. All right, let's go. So leadership within itself is not just about strategy. It's not just about the vision, and it's not just about intelligence. Those of us who truly influence, inspire, and sustain our impact, we are the ones who manage our emotions. We manage both our emotions and we know how to respond to the emotions of others. This is very important because you cannot have a business that you have people present and you not know how to respond to your people or how to speak to your people. Emotional intelligence is the difference between reacting versus responding. It's the difference between controlling versus connecting. And it's certainly the difference between managing people versus leading people. We manage things, we lead people. So, this particular time, I want to help us as much as I can in the time that we have together to develop that awareness and the relational wisdom that multiplies our influence. And believe me, I can tell you from experience, whether it was leaders that have led me, or whether it was people that I was leading, I was on both ends of the spectrum, and I understand what it meant now when I didn't have that relational wisdom when I was very young in leadership. I didn't have that awareness that I should have had leading people. And sometimes you don't know it until they're gone. Sometimes you don't realize it until you get that epiphany and you say, "Oh, that's why that happened. That's why the person responded the way that they did. That's why they reacted the way that they did." It's important that we manage our own emotions and that we know how to respond to the people that we lead. and not just the people that we lead, but people that we work alongside, our colleagues, those who are in the same business doing the same things. We just don't respond to people just any kind of way. There is an emotional intelligence, a level that all leaders need to develop. And so that's what this time together is about. So let's be very honest. Y'all know I always say be honest with you first, because if you can look yourself in the mirror and be honest with you, you won't be so quick to judge folks when they're at the state or the place that they are in. The truth is, most of our leadership problems aren't strategy problems. Most leaders, the leaders I know, they're brilliant people. They have a very excellent way of doing what they do. They are very intelligent in their craft. But most of our problems are not the strategy. That's not the major problem that we have. The major problem is emotional intelligence. If we don't manage our emotions, we can change the entire atmosphere of the workspace in just a moment, in one sentence, in a few words. When we come in, all of us comes in. So if we have an attitude that's less than positive, we come in with that. And if we respond to folks with that same attitude, the atmosphere becomes that of what we brought as leaders. So understand that teams don't fall apart because the leader isn't smart enough. That's not why teams fall apart, because most leaders are very smart. I'm complimenting y'all. Somebody can say thank you or something in the chat, but most leaders are quite smart in their craft and what they do. So the teams don't fall apart because the leader isn't smart enough. They fall apart because the leader isn't aware enough. He or she just may not be aware. And I shared that with y'all about myself. A whole lot of lives back. I talked about when I was very young in the military and in leadership, and how I had this session with my team, and I asked them the question. And I want y'all to understand that when I asked the question, it wasn't something that I planned to do. It wasn't something that me as a leader said, I just want to see and check the temperature of my team. It was something that when I was in my private time in prayer with God, just told me, when you get to work, get the team together and ask them, how are you doing as a leader? And I was not ready for the response that I received, y'all. But I just believe that when we are aware of how we operate, how we're treating people, how we are entreating them, it helps us grow if we take it in a way that it is constructive and that it helps us learn a lesson so that we can be better. And so that's what I want to do today, is help us be better in our leadership, because some of us got sharp tongues. I wish somebody would be honest and say, that's me. Some of us have sharp tongues. Some of us are not so calm. Some of us are not so patient. And I'm not picking on any particular area. I am saying that we are who we are, but we make adjustments and we become aware so that we can be better. Better than we were yesterday, better than the day before, better than one moment to the next. Once we become aware, we have a choice to make. We can either change for the better, or we can remain the same and never become that leader who becomes premier because they became aware of themselves before they made the people they lead aware of themselves. So I want to ask a quick question. And that question is, have you ever worked with someone who was brilliant, but emotionally draining. If you have ever worked with someone that you know they are so brilliant, so smart, so just in tune with what you are doing, and you've ever worked with them, but emotionally they drained you, this is what happens when we're not emotionally aware of how we come or how we show up. And have you ever reacted in a moment and the next moment you wished you had responded differently? These are the types of things that happens when you don't develop that emotional intelligence. Because sometimes we can be quick to answer. And there is a scripture in the Bible that says, be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry. But if you don't develop that emotional intelligence, you'll do the very opposite. You'll fly off the cuff. You won't understand the entire situation. You won't take into account that person's temperament, how that person acts, and why they do what they do. You won't take any of that. But when you start developing in those areas where you're not just flying off the cuff, but that you become that emotionally intelligent leader. This is where emotional intelligence will start living, not just as a notion, but you'll actually start living it out. And it starts with self-awareness. I think I shared this some time back, that I did read a book before. I was trying to see if I have it in here somewhere, but John Maxwell wrote a book called The Self-Aware Leader. It's a small book, easy read. You can probably read it in a day, but very good book to help leaders if you are just now working on this, that you can read it and get some real nuggets and some great insight on being a self aware leader. Because emotionally intelligent leaders know themselves first. There is something in the military that we had to learn as a part of kind of a creed, if you will, and we had to know our subordinates. We had to know them. But the part that I didn't learn until I was well into being a leader was that I needed to know me first. Emotionally intelligent leaders, they understand triggers, their own triggers. Like, I know what triggers me. You got to know what triggers you, leaders. You got to know your tone. If you see me yelling or screaming or going crazy, that's completely outside of my character and my temperament. I know my tone. I know my tone. I know my energy. Leaders, you need to know your energy. If you are coming into a space and a place and then everything starts to get, people start getting nervous, they turn, they stare at their computers because they don't want to look at you, they don't want to speak, they just want to do their jobs and go home. Check your energy. Check your energy, because the team shouldn't be afraid of you. They shouldn't be avoiding you. Check your tone. Know your triggers and know your impact on the room, on the team, in the business. Know how, when you show up, how people respond. Because emotionally intelligent leaders, when they walk in the room, they read the room. You don't have to talk to everybody in the room to read it. If you don't understand your emotions, ladies and gentlemen, will lead you. And the thing about our emotions is this: they are unreliable. You could be emotionally charged in one moment, and in the next moment, flying, I mean, just calm, peaceful, on a cloud. But people are confused because just a moment ago you were emotionally charged and flying off the cuff. I want to share with y'all this one leader. Of course, I won't name names, but and I may have shared this before some time back. But anyway, there was a senior leader over me who, you know, I needed to come in to get, counseling, how I was doing, evaluated, if you will. And so the leader made sure, messaged me, emailed me, and said, "Hey, get on my calendar for this day. We'll do your, your counseling." Yes, sir. I get on his calendar. I make sure that he sees it, and I'm ready. I show up for the counseling, and he's somewhere flying off a cuff, and he's like, "What? Why are you here?" And I'm standing there like, "Really?" I didn't say anything, but I stood there like, I said, "Well, sir, you told me to get on your calendar today at this time, and well, you're gonna have to come back another time," and just basically dismissed, me and the time that he insisted that I would come see him. And that changed my outlook on him. When I say that, I was never disrespectful, would never disrespect anyone who is senior to me, who is, my leader, would never do that. But I was very careful about how I approached them. When I would see them, I would read their energy. If they seemed to be one way, then I would respond that way. I would adjust my, how I respond. If they seemed to be another way, I would adjust my response. Sometimes it would be no response because they would be on that same type of flipping out type behavior. And so the point I'm making, and the reason I'm sharing this is that you don't want your people concerned about whether or not they can speak to you as a leader, whether they can be honest with you as their leader, and whether they can trust that if they share with you how they really feel, that it won't be used against them. So think about it. What situations tend to trigger your strongest reactions? You got to know this as a leader in a business. You got to know that certain things, if they're not in order, they're going to trigger you. If you have told someone to do something a certain way and they keep doing it the wrong way, you got to know that as a leader, that triggers you. And you have to figure out how to respond versus reacting. And some of the things that you really need to pay attention to is how you respond or react, or how it triggers you. If it is criticism, if it is you feeling a lack of control, whether you have expectations that were not met, if you're feeling ignored as a leader. Sometimes leaders can keep telling the team lead, the manager, if you're business owner or president, you keep telling the CEO that you want things done this way and you're feeling ignored. You got to pay attention to these. You got to know this about you. And you have to take this knowing about yourself and make adjustments. I'm not saying adjust what you have required of the team. That's not what I'm saying. You got to adjust how you respond to the team, because self-awareness, ladies and gentlemen, is the starting line of emotional intelligence. It's the starting line. You can't just know yourself and then that's it. You have to start there and then develop it from there. You have to be able to respond versus react. And that's that emotional regulation that you have to have within you. If somebody else has to calm you down, then you got to develop that emotional intelligence. You got to make sure that you know you. And then you develop how you're going to handle those triggers I talked about, how you're going to handle responding to them versus reacting. Because emotionally intelligent leaders pause before responding. And I'm not saying that you got to fake like you're anything that you're not. That's not what I'm saying. Developing emotional intelligence has nothing to do with faking. It has all to do with you becoming first self aware and then making adjustments of the awareness you have now of your team, of your leaders, those who are following you. And why? You want to know why? It's because reactions are emotional, responses are intentional. They're intentional. Your leadership is not measured by how you act in calm moments. If it's a calm moment, anybody can be calm. It's not measured by how you act when things are calm, but how you show up under pressure. How you show up under pressure is going to tell the truth. And some practical strategies I do want to give you today. And that first one I said earlier, pause before responding. It's okay, even if you have to walk away and say, give me a moment. If you got to go into your office and collect yourself for a few minutes, if you need that pause, that doesn't mean weakness. That doesn't mean that you lost control. That means that you are in control of your emotional awareness. And it is okay to step away and pause before you respond. If you can't pause in the room for a few seconds, then and you need to leave the room, do that. Be that responsible leader that will pause before they fly off the cuff, that they will pause and think. First, taking into consideration what has been said, who said it, what has been done, why it was done, taking all these things in and pausing before you respond. Then you can also breathe before speaking. I know sometimes for me, sometimes I'm talking when I get excited, I barely take a breath. But the point I'm making is if you have to pause before you respond, you can also take a breath before speaking. Take that breath. I know a lot of times we don't like silence and we don't like for it to sound like or look like we don't have anything to say or we don't know the answer. It's okay to breathe before you speak. I'm not saying breathe like you're mad, like, I mean, but take a breath. It's okay. Take a breath. And then ask questions before making assumptions. That really can help you pause before responding. Because when you ask a question about something you're not clear about, then you get the clarity you need to help you give the response that's necessary. So ask those questions. If the person said, I didn't do so and so, and then you cut them off and then start charging at them, you didn't get all of the information that you need. Maybe they were about to say, well, the project you gave me the day before ran a little over, and this is why I did not complete this thing. You got to ask questions before you make assumptions. And if I can tell you anything as a leader, never make assumptions. Get the team to give you the information. Ask the questions. And if you are the type that you have instructed your leaders to say, hey, when I come into the meeting, I need you to always have A, B, C, and D information for me. And if you have made that a requirement, then don't jump to an assumption before they give you A, B, C, and D. So that way, you have all the information you need to make a proper response. Is this making sense to anybody? Now, as I was talking about reading the room and doing all the things, when you are in a stress moment, this is very important. If you hit a stressful moment, what's your go-to reaction? What's your go-to reaction? Do you stop, breathe, think about it, or do you quickly, before even the stress fully hits, you have an answer? You have a reaction. And then after you have come to come to that truth about you, how you respond or how you react to stress moments, then ask yourself, how can I respond differently next time? And this kind of work that I'm talking about, y'all, this is not something that you can bring your team in around the table and they can tell you how to do. This is something that you have to do for you. You have to be so self aware that you know when to pause, you know when to respond, you know when to ask questions. So important. I talked a little bit earlier about reading the room. Emotionally intelligent leaders, we don't just lead tasks, y'all. We lead people. So if you're going to lead people, you have different people from different walks of life with different energies, different temperaments. You got to learn to read the room. Pay attention to their body language. Pay attention when their tone shifts. If they're having a conversation when you walk in the room and they are upbeat about it, talking about it, going on with a coworker about it, and they are great talking about what they're talking about. And then as soon as you come in, their tone shifts. You got to pay attention to that. And you have to know how to respond based on what you know about your people. And then whatever you need to do as a leader to find out what the morale is. If you need to do a survey, if you need to ask for feedback, you want to know what the morale is for the team, for the business, for what's going on in this side of town or that side of town, or what's going on in this area. You need to know the morale of that. You need to know how the people are feeling, how they're doing, if they are complaining, if they have solutions, if they have constructive criticism. All these things, you got to pay attention to that. All these things that feed into morale, because if the morale gets low, then the production will be low. And if it gets too low, it's going to affect the customers, the clients. It's going to affect the other team members. And if there is any tension, if you have junior leaders or lower level leaders, they've got to be able to pick up on unspoken tension. And as we are leading people and as we are doing various things, we got to be able to recognize when there's some tension there as well. If you can recognize that you have tension, if you pay close attention, you can recognize if your team members have tension as well, even if they never said a word. And this is a thing, a little leadership nugget that I want to give you, is that what isn't being said in the room is often more important than what is being said in the room. What is not being said in the room is often, not all the time, it's not 100%, but it's often more important than what is being said in the room. So if you can sense that the team is disengaged, if they are in any way overwhelmed, if they are frustrated, if you can sense it, then you've got to figure out a plan to help get this atmosphere. in this team to a healthy level, and that it will make the team be engaged again. You have to, as a leader, you gotta adjust your approach as a leader based on what they observe and based upon what you observe of them. You got to be able to make that adjustment. I know we might be going a little bit long today, but this is necessary. It's necessary because leaders, we are all the way on another level. And if we don't get our emotions under wraps, if we don't develop emotional intelligence, the caliber of people that are coming into our organizations at this time it's going to affect how long they stay, how much they give, and if they walk away. You got to be able to influence with emotional wisdom. I hope I'm making sense with that. When you are developing relationships, or even when your team is developing relationships with one another, as the leader, you got to be able to influence them with that emotional wisdom that helps you to be able to not just know them, but to be able to lead them. You got to be able to do this so that you can build trust quickly, so that you can resolve conflict in a way that is effective. And you got to be able to do it so you can communicate clearly to them, so that when you give any information, when you are giving instruction, they understand, pick it up, and move quickly because they trust you, because they know that you'll resolve a problem if one arises, and because you communicate very well with them. And you gotta, as an emotionally intelligent leader, you got to make sure that the environment that's created in your business, in your team, in your organization, that it's safe. That's so important to people, that they feel safe, that they trust the leader that they are following. That means you can't always dominate the conversation. You got to create connection, because this is the thing. You want people to do more than just respect your authority. You want them to follow your emotional intelligence, because people, they may respect your authority. They may give reverence to your title, but they will follow your emotional intelligence. They'll follow it. And I could give you a point in case, but we don't have time. But if that leader is emotionally unintelligent, those who are with them, working with them and working for them, they will follow. They will follow. All right, y'all, listen. This week, this is what I want you to do. Do this for you, not for me. Do this for you. Identify one emotional trigger that you'll manage better. Practice one pause before reacting. That's the second thing. And then the third thing is intentionally strengthen one relationship on your team, in your business. So the first thing is identify one emotional trigger that you're going to manage better. The second thing is practice one pause before responding or reacting. And then the third thing is intentionally strengthen one relationship on your team or in your business. Y'all do those three things, you will be on your way to becoming not just a self aware leader, but an emotionally intelligent one who will lead his or her team down to the place that he or she is trying to get to as it relates to their vision. You'll be well on your way. You'll be well on your way. All right, y'all. If we have any questions, you can drop them in the chat real quick and I'll answer them as quickly as I can. But while I'm waiting for that, I want to give you all an opportunity to join my masterclass next week. It will be next week, March 19th. That is Thursday. It's going to be from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. This is so the reason I'm having it around lunch hours is because I don't want anyone to have to lose work time. I don't want anyone to have to stay late, especially if you have to get home to family. But and I want you to be able to have lunch at the same time because there will be a time there, that you'll have to eat your lunch if you prepare your lunch or if you go to a restaurant or whatever to eat lunch. So that will be March 19th from 11 a.m. That's Thursday, next Thursday, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. And we are going to talk about leadership intelligence. Leadership intelligence. Now, let me say this. This is not an open event. You must register or you will not be able to get into it. You must go to my website, that is leadwithlita.com, and you have to register for this upcoming event. That's next week, March 19th. You'll see it on my website. You must register. There is a small fee. There is a small investment that you need to make as well before you can attend. And when you make that investment, you will be glad you did. It's a small investment, to say the least. But join me next Thursday, March 19th, for Lead with Leaders Masterclass on Leadership Intelligence. All right, y'all. And tell someone about it. Share with anyone who needs this particular conversation on emotional intelligence. And then also share with them next week my masterclass that's going to be going on March 19th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. It's going to be worth the small investment. Remember, you have to go to my website to register. You're not going to find it anywhere else. You must register there, and then you will be given access to the masterclass for next week. Let's see if we got any questions. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for joining me for this time together. I'm always excited to get together on the second and fourth Tuesdays of each month to do Tuesday Leadership Tips with Lita. You all enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, and I look forward to seeing you next time. And I'll also announce again in a post or something about the masterclass for next week. All right, y'all. Share it with a friend. Until next time, Tuesday Leadership Tips with Lita, we're out.